Herds of wild boars weighing hundreds of kilograms can turn farmers' fields into a literal war zone in just one night. Darkness falls. Massive shadows emerge from the forest edge. Snouts drive deep into the topsoil. They rip the ground open, carving wide furrows identical to heavy tractor tracks. Thick roots snap and crunch. Damp earth squelches under the shifting weight of hundreds of heavy hooves. This destruction runs on raw biological mechanics. Boar reproduction operates like a high-speed factory conveyor belt. One adult female delivers 6 to 12 piglets, twice a year. A single pair easily triples a local herd in 24 months. The math is relentless. Explosive multiplication transforms a standard forest dweller into a perfect invasive machine, an engine of ecological collapse. While the global spread accelerates across multiple continents, North America reveals the true scale of the crisis. The United States population alone now exceeds 6 million individuals. Texas harbors over 2.5 million. The financial hit matches the biological surge. Every 12 months, this invasive force inflicts $2.5 billion in agricultural and infrastructure damage. A boar snout functions like a forged steel plow. It crushes roots, unearths tubers, and destroys soil structures with brutal mechanical force. Stalks snap, plants collapse. An entire harvest vanishes under a chaotic layer of overturned dirt. The raid ends. The massive silhouettes slip back into the pitch-black woods, leaving a freshly torn wasteland behind. When the damage toll reached billions of dollars, farmers realized ordinary electric fences just do not work. Heavy engineering came into play. European countries tried stretching endless kilometers of electrified wire across agricultural regions. The animals simply pushed through. The real industrial response took shape in the United States, primarily across the torn fields of Texas and Oklahoma. Here, agricultural defense relies on massive steel corral traps. These are not simple cages. A standard enclosure spans 10 to 15 meters in diameter, covering the exact footprint of a small suburban house. Heavy-duty steel grid panels locked together, pinned deep into the soil with solid iron posts. This rigid skeleton prevents the herd from digging under the base. Piles of fermented corn sit in the center. The core of the system is pure surveillance. Motion-triggered cellular cameras mount to the thick steel bars. They stream live infrared video straight to an operator miles away. The trap stays open for days, conditioning the animals to feed without fear. The goal is never a single capture. The target is the entire local population. The night vision feed flickers. A massive herd steps fully into the steel perimeter. The operator watches the screen, waiting for the final stragglers to cross the threshold. A finger presses the remote trigger. A magnetic latch snaps open. A heavy steel gate weighing hundreds of kilograms falls instantly. A dull, heavy metallic clank violently cuts through the dark field. Between 20 and 30 animals stand locked inside the steel enclosure at once. The frantic scrambling eventually stops. Thick, dry dust slowly settles over the captive herd inside the locked cage. But steel traps catching 30 heads prove too slow for a beast that doubles its population in 6 months. To somehow contain the growth, farmers had to call in aviation. Agricultural defense has morphed into a tactical military operation. The hunt shifts to the dead of night. Pitch-black fields stretch out below the aircraft, completely invisible to the naked eye. But inside the cockpit, screens glow. Bright white silhouettes of a massive herd pulse on thermal imaging monitors, contrasted against the cold ground under the heavy, deafening roar of a low-flying helicopter. Advanced sensors lock onto body heat from hundreds of meters away, cutting through total darkness and dense foliage. Down in the dirt, heavy wild pigs scramble desperately through thick mud, trying to outrun military-grade hardware. Marksmen lean out of the open helicopter doors, firing semi-automatic rifles at targets moving at nearly 50 kilometers per hour. Total technological dominance. In Texas alone, aerial crews gun down tens of thousands of boars every single year. Yet the sheer scale of biological reproduction outpaces the crosshairs. While one sounder is wiped out in the open fields, others are already multiplying rapidly in the dense forest nearby. Nationwide, professional eradication teams eliminate hundreds of thousands of individuals annually, a massive body count that ultimately fails to make a single dent in the expanding invasion. Despite night raids and millions of spent cartridges, this war is being lost on a global scale. The crisis stretches far beyond a single territory, overwhelming agricultural hubs across the northern hemisphere. Packs of feral beasts with dominant males weighing over 200 kilograms, roughly the weight of a heavy motorcycle, systematically dismantle entire ecosystems. They crush the sprawling cotton fields of Texas. They tear through the ancient vineyards of Spain. They strip bare the dense oak forests of Germany. Total ecological dominance. Governments deployed their highest-tier defensive arsenal to halt the invasion. Engineers built high-voltage electrified perimeters. Hunters set massive steel traps. Tactical units took to the skies, scanning the pitch-black brush with thermal optics and firing from low-flying helicopters. None of it worked. The boars always return. The eradication strategy hit a hard biological wall. Eliminate one herd and another takes its place within weeks, fueled by a reproductive engine that easily outpaces any official hunting quota. How do you defeat an enemy that cannot be exterminated even from a helicopter? The traditional Western path of total annihilation reached a permanent dead end. You simply cannot outshoot their biology. While the United States and Europe spend massive resources on night shooting and helicopters just to destroy pests, China looks at the situation differently. There, they figured out how to make serious money on these animals. We shift from exterminating a pest to cultivating a premium asset. In the rugged provinces of Guangxi, Hunan, and Guizhou, farmers fence off entire mountain slopes with heavy steel. Forget cramped concrete pens. This is a controlled wild ecosystem. A single enclosure covers 20 to 50 hectares. That equals 70 professional football fields locked completely behind metal. High steel barriers cut directly through the dense forest. Because wild boars easily root up 3 feet of earth, engineers bury the mesh deep underground and pour solid concrete foundations. The perimeter is absolute. Inside, 3,000 to 5,000 animals roam free. A massive herd surges down the steep incline. The forest echoes with the loud crunch of dry leaves and the sharp snap of branches under thousands of driving hooves. They run, they compete, they hunt. Close up, wet, muscular snouts tear violently into the topsoil. The animals dig deep beneath the thick leaf litter, ripping out forest tubers, dense roots, and hidden insects. This relentless physical exertion across harsh karst terrain transforms the biology of the herd. Constant daily movement builds dense, exceptionally lean muscle. The animals keep all their primal instincts, channeling them entirely within a massive commercial grid. The herd never stops moving, relentlessly churning the mountain soil in an endless search for food. But why construct giant steel enclosures across entire mountains? The answer lies in the agricultural catastrophe of 2018 and a market price that is 2 to 3 times higher than ordinary pork. That year, the African swine fever outbreak devastated the livestock sector. The virus spread through commercial facilities with relentless speed, offering zero chance for infected herds. Authorities and farmers culled hundreds of millions of domestic pigs. This created an apocalyptic scale for national food security. The primary meat supply vanished. To survive this collapse, breeders sought a radical genetic solution and turned their attention to the wild boar. Buyers already valued the lean, dense, and distinctly flavored meat of the wild animal, viewing it not as a pest but as a premium asset. The economic contrast became undeniable. Hundreds of millions of destroyed domestic individuals stood against an instant market spike for wild boar meat, jumping up to 3 times the standard rate. Breeders began crossing pure forest boars with standard domestic sows to build an entirely new agricultural model. The objective required a precise biological balance. A pure wild predator attacks workers and rejects captivity. A standard domestic pig lacks the natural immunity and muscle density required for the premium market. The crossbreeding sequence merges the physical durability of a forest dweller with the manageable growth pattern of domestic stock. The resulting genetic hybrid retains its raw survival instincts and active foraging drive, yet remains completely adapted to the controlled environment of a commercial farming system. This premium hybrid genetics requires a special approach. To minimize costs, animals are not fed expensive compound feed, but cheap corn and sweet potatoes are scattered through the forest. The dull thud of heavy cassava and sweet potato roots hitting the forest floor echoes through the trees. A wide shot reveals a vast woodland transformed into a dynamic feeding zone. Yellow corn, rice bran, and soybeans rain down across the dirt. No sterile industrial pellets, just raw material. A close-up captures captures the physical reality of the feeding point. Heavy breathing of 150-kilogram carcasses fills the damp air. Snouts tear into the solid earth. The herd is forced to move, forage, and hunt for every single calorie. This constant kinetic activity fundamentally alters the farming mathematics. Farmers dump local agricultural byproducts, driving feed costs down to absolute minimums. But time becomes the new currency. Unlike factory stock, these hybrids grow slowly. It takes 12 to 18 months for an individual to reach market weight. At maturity, the animals scale between 120 and 150 kilograms. Broad shoulders, dense muscle mass, zero excess fat. The result is a flawless economic loop. Cheap food and wild physical activity translate directly into astronomical profit margins. A graphic transition flashes across the screen, revealing the financial peak of this agricultural shift. $5 billion a year, an annual turnover comparable to the entire gross domestic product of a small island nation like Fiji. An immense financial empire built entirely on discarded root vegetables and forest dirt. A species once hunted down as an agricultural disaster now anchors a highly lucrative rural economy. Yet a critical anomaly remains in the system. Does turning wild boars into a massive commercial industry truly solve the original pest problem? Or does it simply engineer a new, uncontrollable threat for the future? Meat raised on free mountain pastures enters industrial mixers, where it blends with sea salt, white wine, and spices, beginning its transformation. But a second before the mixer, the texture is programmed by the powerful knives of the meat grinder. The facility executes the basic cleaning and breakdown phases in rapid, calculated sequences. Butchers swiftly dismantle the carcasses into primary components. Conveyor belts immediately divert the heavy hind legs toward the aging rooms to become whole cured hams. The remaining premium lean muscle takes a radically different path. Salami requires absolute structural perfection. Workers feed the sorted lean cuts into a massive, high-capacity grinder. Inside the heavy stainless steel throat, raw muscle meets rotating augers and razor-sharp extrusion plates. The industrial system devours 5 tons of meat in under 10 minutes. That equals the weight of 2 full-size pickup trucks vanishing into the machinery. Steel blades slice cleanly through the dense muscle fibers instead of crushing them. Precision matters here. Clean cuts trap the natural moisture securely inside the cellular walls. Simultaneously, operators introduce the crucial binding elements. Tenderloin and a carefully measured fraction of offal drop into the spinning vortex to deepen the flavor profile. Then comes the raw white fat. The cold blocks carry a heavy, sticky texture that stubbornly clings to the frosted metal hoppers as they slide down into the blades. The exact geometry of these components dictates the future of the product. The strict ratio of lean meat to solid fat determines how the meat will dry and age over the coming months. A minor deviation ruins the entire batch. Exceptional salami never truly starts with premium spices or vintage liquids. It originates entirely in this mechanical manipulation of chopped tissue and fat. The dense matrix forces its way through the final steel plates and falls into the collection bins. The structural foundation is officially locked. The raw mince stands ready for the upcoming chemical trials, but the intense physical processing has only just begun. While the minced meat waits its turn, the whole cuts set aside, those very pork legs, undergo a completely different, quiet preparation. Industrial grinders just tore through mince with violent speed. Here, human hands move with calculated restraint. Each dense, raw leg, weighing roughly as much as a solid bowling ball, demands surgical precision. Craftsmen manually strip away excess fat and skin, carefully sculpting the structural foundation of the ham to ensure even penetration later. Every cut matters. Before moving forward, each piece receives a unique barcode, a digital passport for a long journey. Then comes the chemistry. You can hear the sharp crunch of coarse sea salt as workers firmly rub it deep into the dense, cold muscle fibers. 100% of the surface disappears beneath pure sea salt, creating a thick, highly reactive shell. At this stage, salt is not a flavor enhancer. It is a relentless extraction engine. Through the strict physics of osmosis, the hypertonic crystalline layer actively draws moisture outward, forcing water molecules to abandon the deep cellular structure. The meat slowly dehydrates. No machines, no aggressive impacts, sealed inside cold, dark climate chambers, the legs simply vanish under a white blanket. Beneath this heavy crust of salt, the meat is left in absolute stillness, its slow internal transformation completely hidden from the outside world. Returning to our minced meat. While the hams simply lie in salt, the minced meat goes under a hydraulic press to take shape. Industrial mixers blend the chopped pork with a strict measure of white wine, sea salt, and crushed garlic. Then comes the brute force. Operators load the dense paste into a heavy-duty hydraulic syringe. Steel pistons push downward. The soulless machine extrudes the heavy filling into natural casings with relentless mechanical precision. It dictates the exact volume, tight enough to hold the internal structure, loose enough to push out trapped air pockets. Cold hydraulics drive the mass. Yet at the end of the steel nozzle, industrial automation hits a sudden paradox: human hands. Workers manually wrap and knot coarse twine around every single stick, applying exact physical tension to lock the pressure inside. The factory line churns out hundreds of salami units every single day, hundreds of precise knots, zero robotic intervention. Thick twine firmly secures the familiar cylindrical profile, but without the slow passage of time, this perfectly bound casing holds nothing more than raw meat. Whole hams, unlike minced meat, cannot be neatly stuffed into a casing. To define their final shape after the salt bath, heavy industrial machinery takes over. The process begins with a sudden sensory shock. A violent, high-pressure jet of ice-cold water blasts across the meat, stripping away the thick exterior crust of salt in mere seconds. The surface is clean, but the vital sodium remains securely locked deep inside the tissue. Then the true physical transformation begins. The massive leg enters a continuous mechanical roller system. Heavy steel cylinders crush down onto the muscle fibers, acting like a merciless deep tissue massage. These rollers squeeze the last stubborn drops of moisture out of the meat, while driving the salt molecules even deeper into the dense cellular structure. Specialized pneumatic presses then slam down on the joints, applying over 2,000 pounds of force. That is equivalent to the weight of a small passenger car resting on a single limb. The bone and muscle yield completely under the immense load. This brutal mechanical discipline is exactly what gives premium cured ham its iconic flattened silhouette. It is not a natural anatomical shape. It is a strictly engineered profile. With the physical geometry permanently locked in place, the intense handling stops. The meat enters the critical phase of cold stabilization. For 90 days, the legs rest in a strictly regulated, highly humid chill. The outer skin slowly hardens into a protective shield. Inside, the raw flesh gradually dehydrates, condensing its complex proteins without any further human interference. The flattened hams are finally loaded onto towering steel racks and pushed straight into the absolute darkness of the climate chambers for long months of isolated aging. The heavy presses have already determined the physical shape for both products, but the ultimate transformation happens entirely at the micro level. For salami, this critical stage begins right now. The steel doors of the climate chambers seal shut. Immediately, the sharp, sour scent of active fermentation saturates the heavy air. Sensors lock the temperature precisely between 12 and 16 degrees Celsius. Humidity stays firmly pinned between 70 and 80%. These are the exact parameters of a biological reactor. For the next 3 to 6 weeks, a microscopic workforce takes total control. Lactic acid bacteria rapidly devour residual sugars, flooding the tissue with acid. The internal pH level plummets. This sudden chemical drop neutralizes dangerous pathogens and physically alters the protein structure. Within days, a pale white dusting erupts across the exterior casing. The bloom rapidly thickens into a dense coat. Why intentionally cover elite premium meat with a thick layer of mold? This is not spoilage, this is Penicillium nalgiavans, a strictly cultivated fungal strain. The velvet-like white fluff operates exactly like a sophisticated, high-tech synthetic membrane. It physically blocks oxygen from penetrating the casing, preventing the pure pork fat from oxidizing and turning rancid. It traps essential moisture inside the structure. The material contrast is absolute. A bright, fluffy white exterior tightly grips the dark crimson fermented muscle. Underneath the biological armor, the raw meat rapidly dehydrates and darkens into a firm, ruby red core. Workers rotate every single piece daily, ensuring the fungal growth spreads evenly across the surface. One small shift in humidity and the entire batch rots. This microscopic engine runs continuously for up to 1,000 hours. When the curing cycle finally peaks, human hands intervene to stop the process. Specialists manually brush away the thickest layers of excess mold from the exterior, leaving only a fine, stabilizing dust on the skin. Packing machinery swiftly wraps the dense sausages images in food-grade paper and drops them straight into plain cardboard shipping boxes. Hundreds of millions of microscopic bacteria complete their silent labor, engineering the flawless structural architecture of a single perfect slice. While salami fully matures in just a few weeks, hams require years of absolute isolation to reach their peak flavor. Down in the curing cellars, technology steps aside, time takes over. For 24 to 36 months, the meat rests in total darkness, undergoing a silent but profound chemical history. Natural endogenous enzymes initiate a relentless microscopic teardown. Specific proteases dismantle dense muscle proteins into single amino acids, generating a highly concentrated umami profile. Simultaneously, lipases break down the lipids into complex, volatile fatty acids. Machines cannot replicate this structural decay. The process is absolute, but this intense flavor development demands a brutal physical toll. Through continuous evaporation, the ham loses 30 to 40% of its initial weight. It is the equivalent of acquiring a 10-ton asset and watching 4 tons slowly vanish into the cellar air. This colossal shrinkage, combined with freezing working capital for 3 entire years, forms the true foundation of the premium price tag. Once traditional manual inspections verify the deep cure, workers extract the heavy bones and trim the remaining meat into uniform blocks. High-capacity automated blades immediately step in. Razor-thin cuts fall away. The sliced pieces quietly land in the vacuum packaging, hiding years of waiting within. Both the quick-fermented salami and the hams aged for years ultimately converge at a single point. They arrive on the illuminated shelves of elite markets, completing an incredible economic cycle. For generations, wild boars operated as a pure nightmare for agricultural communities. A roaming herd easily destroys entire fields in hours, generating billions of dollars in global crop losses every single year. A relentless forest pest, a pure financial drain. Then the approach shifted. Instead of fighting an endless war of eradication, humans adapted to nature by monetizing the threat. The agricultural sector took a localized ecological crisis and engineered it into a highly profitable global economic chain. The math flipped completely. An invasive animal that once cost a farmer thousands in ruined grain now serves as the raw biological foundation for a premium charcuterie industry. Destruction became an elite asset. This represents far more than a simple meat processing workflow. It is a brilliant capitalist solution to a massive environmental problem. The manufacturing loop now stands successfully closed, but the underlying environment constantly mutates. Animal populations fluctuate rapidly, new pathogens emerge in the wild, and the next sudden biological shift could easily shatter this fragile multi-million-dollar balance.